Legacy is what you pass down to your children and to your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone. Many hope to create it. Many more hope to live up to it. Very few ever succeed. The legacy of this show hopes to be about what Westeros means to us, and what we hope it may mean to a new generation of fans, and the generation after that. Boasting discussions that will endure, passions that will rise, debates that will make the small council jealous. With a combined 44 years of experience behind a microphone, the hosts and guest hosts of this show are dedicated to the fans' experience in reviewing anything from Westeros, Essos, and beyond. This group is not the house of a lion, a direwolf, or even a dragon. This is a fraternity, a lineage, a house that endures beyond sigils, and aims to leave a legacy no other podcast has. So it's time to call the banners, for this is the House of the Empire.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's time for another episode of House of the Empire, talking about House of the Dragon in all of its glory. I know we usually do some spoiler-free thoughts, but tonight we're jumping straight into spoilers. There's just too much to talk about, and we don't have enough time on our hands to beat around the bush and BS all of this, so we're going to get hot and heavy here, as it were, although I'm pretty sure none of those other guys want to get hot and heavy with me, so we'll just stick to House of the Dragon conversations. Joining me on the show, as he pretty much always does, it's Shawn. Dude, you and I kind of built a bond over Game of Thrones over the last couple of years. There's even mentions of previous shows that we've done in the intro, like Call the Banners. I love that little nod that we do in there. I'm really excited to be talking spoilers right off the gate, right out of the bat. I probably mix those terms up because I'm just so excited to talk about what we got to talk about tonight.
That's my favorite part of the intro, when we hear the Call the Banners part, and it lines up just before we see the wildfire explosion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. I dig it. I mean, I love it. Game of Thrones is back. And you got to say that in week one, right? We legitimately could all say Game of Thrones was back in week one. And then in week two, we got the intro back. Surprise, surprise. Game of Thrones is back in week two. So I could not have asked for a better start. And I have a feeling HBO and Warner Brothers feel the same way.
Oh, I definitely feel that, because wasn't there confirmation already that given how big the debut was, it's already been picked up for season 2?
It has, and it's funny. I know we haven't even introed Mike yet, so apologies. I got to bring this up, and let's all just dive into it for a second. Think about this. We just did a video, which you can find on our YouTube channel right now. It's just on the intro. If you want a deep dive, I think it's 18 minutes long, just on the intro. It's on the channel now. Go check that out. Give that video a like, leave a comment, let us know what you thought. This Game of Thrones, a lot of people forget this. Game of Thrones always leaks. Not sometimes, it always leaks because it debuts over there 5 hours earlier. It's not like this is just happening for House of the Dragon. It happened all through Game of Thrones too. And they're still pulling the rating that they are with all the pirating that goes on from leaking 5 hours earlier. And if you don't think there's pirating going on from 5 hours earlier, there's thousands. If you go on any of those websites right now, thousands. I guarantee you there's probably some that are already 5 figures in terms of downloads. And you're losing all that in terms of your rating. And look at the rating they put up. Why not renew it for season 2, 3, 4, and 5 when you're at it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it saves us about 18 minutes of being able to talk about it on this discussion, just talking about the intro. But Mike, given this episode and given this intro, given the ratings that have come out, is it fair to say that not only is Game of Thrones back, but it's also here to stay?
Hell yes. I mean, there's no question about it. These 2 episodes to me have been absolutely phenomenal, man. And I feel like it just has me intrigued. I keep wanting more and more. It goes by so fast, especially this second episode went by really fast. I know a little shorter in time, but it went by very fast, and I get disappointed. But I can tell you, I look forward to Sundays now. I will, obviously, because football's back in a week or so. But more importantly, House of the Dragon, man. I mean, this is just these 10 episodes period are going to go by super fast, but I'm super glad that it's back. I really enjoyed tonight's episode, man, and I can't wait to dive in it with you too.
The really ironic thing, the funny thing is these 10 weeks are going to go by so fast, and then we'll have to wait like a year and a half for the next season or something.
And you ask, is Game of Thrones back? Is House of the Dragon, is it that show? I have a bunch of friends that were messaging me that their HBO Max accounts were crashing again in week 2, and it's going to happen all the way to week 10 or episode 10. I feel it. I know it's going to happen. So yes, Game of Thrones is back. House of the Dragon is that show.
You know, it's ironic. My internet is not super great. It's not like I'm probably being nice. Most of the time it's trash. I can't even get Wi-Fi in my master bedroom when my router's on the other end of the house. Like I straight up have to go back to my.
So I'm guessing you watch it on HBO Max.
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Me too. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I got on HBO Max about 4.5 minutes early, and episode 2 was already uploaded for me.
Really?
So I was able to start it a little bit early. So I don't know if a lot of people know that. Try it next week if you want to watch it a little. I mean, 4 minutes is 4 minutes, but maybe that might beat it crashing when you log on it right at 9. Just a little. If HBO Max is crashing for anybody out there, try to log on about 3 minutes earlier. It should be uploaded to HBO Max.
You could do 3 minutes early, or you could do 15 minutes late like I've been doing. I try to give people time to start it, let it crash, let it recover and recuperate, and then I go from there. Because I'm like, you know what? I can go make myself a sandwich. I can go to the bathroom one more time. Like I can do all these things that I need to do. And it's not the end of the world for me to, go a quarter past and then be able to see it in its entirety. And so far, I'm 2 for 2. So far, it has not crashed on me once, and that was what I was talking about with my crappy internet. Even with that in mind, waiting 10, even 15 minutes could also be a benefit to people if you are having those problems. Shawn, what's the viewing experience like? You mentioned there's a lot of piracy going on, but up in Canada, north of the border, what's been your viewing experience with this show so far?
For the second week in a row, Game of Thrones has destroyed one of the biggest media apps in our country. So, it's been difficult to try to get the episode. And this week was a little better, but I had a plan B, which I won't name. And we used that plan B, and we're here doing the episode. So I don't know what they can do because the app is smaller than obviously HBO Max is, and we don't get HBO Max up here. And yet HBO Max is still crashing. So
right.
I don't know if there's a fix for this. I don't.
There's not. And I think that's the cool thing. I think that's one of the better signals of anything, more than, 3 guys in talking heads on a YouTube channel saying, yes, it's here to stay. I think HBO Max and your streaming service is Crave, right? Is that what it's called? Yeah. Crave and HBO Max are confirming for the North American continent that if it's crashing that much, that's a testament to how many people are trying to watch the show. So that's a really cool thing. The other interesting thing is we've talked about this on the show previously, how we are expecting time jumps. And particularly the biggest one's going to be like a decade plus worth of a time jump in the middle of the season from episodes 5 to 6. We got a time jump here already, and I guess they needed to state it a couple of times in order to let us know for certain that it's been 6 months since the queen died. But I feel like they said it like at least 3 or 4 times in the episode, and I was like, okay, once or twice would have been enough for me. Like, that one was probably like my biggest gripe, to be honest, of the whole show. Like, I didn't have super big gripes, but usually the show has a little bit tighter writing than that and appeals to a more intelligent audience. But it was like, oh, it's been 6 months. Oh, 6 months ago. Oh, I haven't thought about marriage. It's only been 6 months. Like, we get it. Sorry, but usually Game of Thrones is a little bit better about that, and I was a little frustrated that they tried to keep beating us over the head with it. What are they going to do when we do the actual time jump, like the big one in the middle of the season? It's going to be like, it's been 12 years. Like, are we going to start incorporating memes into this now? I don't know, but it is interesting that we've gone 6 months further. The realm is still in mourning, more or less, and the crab feeder. That's one of the opening sequences we get in this show. The crab feeder is making a name for himself even more so on the Stepstones, to the point that he is bold enough to start sinking Valarian ships. And considering they are the wealthiest house in Westeros right now, that's a pretty big and bold move to be willing to take on a house that has a fleet that size. I'm gonna toss it to you guys about this 6 months time jump and how this episode opens. I have thoughts, but I'm supposed to be the delegator. So Shawn, give me your thoughts, man.
I hope everybody understands that this is this show, and it's going to be rare, if at all, you get back-to-back episodes where it's like one episode ends and the next one picks up immediately after. I'm sure there'll be some big conflict that happens where that we have to get that, but more times than not, it's not going to be like that. I did think and that was one of my fears with the show because of some of the, shall we say, the most forthright complaints about season 7 and 8 is the lack of understanding of time and you're constantly in different places, and it doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. I thought the way they mentioned it off the back, which I think was Otto. I think Otto mentioned it at the beginning. It's been nearly 6 months. I thought that was enough. I thought you just needed to do that. And I too thought that they overcompensated in this episode. I know that I'm sure the writer on this episode is probably like, and no doubt the showrunners, Sapochnik and Condal, take a look at everything and make the changes as necessary. And I'm sure they're like, we need to beat it over the head that, hey, this much time has passed so people understand and they don't get confused. I do think there's some overcompensating happening there for I guess what they perceive as past, maybe not failures, but bad reception. And I hope that it's not as over the head going forward, because I did think that initial one, which was just adamant, was enough. We didn't need to revisit it again. And I thought your point, Zach, was bang on. You need to trust your audience to be intelligent enough to keep up. Just mention things once, not 4 times. And I think that's what it was in this episode, which is at least too many.
Yeah, I would agree. Mike, your thoughts on how the tensions are rising at the small council meetings. Corliss comes in, practically barging in, talking about the status of what's going on outside the Red Keep. And yes, we get the mention of 6 months, but I think we actually get some gears in motion a little bit, not just regarding Daemon, but just regarding the status of the realm and how people are viewing the crown in the aftermath of the death of a monarch.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Corliss is upset. I mean, his ships are getting sunk, and I don't blame him. Obviously, our king, the king is still mourning in a sense. It's time for him to move on, get a new wife. Married again, and he makes it known. What's his name again? Corliss. Corliss. How do you Corliss?
Valarian.
Corliss Valarian.
Corliss,
He makes it known where what he wants the king to do. But
he makes it very known several times in this episode.
Oh, very, very known. Yeah, absolutely. And throughout this episode, he is just, you could tell he is just on his last straw, just in general, but especially with the king. He feels like the king is very weak right now. I don't know if I disagree with him too much, and obviously we'll jump into it once we get deeper in the episode. But yeah, man, I thought I thought it was very interesting. And as far as the time jump, I kind of want to touch on that. I agree with what both of you said. I definitely think that as long as you're paying attention in this episode, the writing is good enough and the acting is good enough that you only need to say it once, maybe twice, but no more than 2 times. I mean, I got it from the jump. The very first time it was said, it was instilled in my brain. Obviously, I know that time jumps
Mhm.
are going to happen. And I personally don't mind them. I am more worried about episode 5 to 6 time jump for me personally.
Yeah.
And that's just because I love Millie Alcock. And I'm not sure how that transition is going to go, just for me as a fan. But she is my favorite character right now. And I hope that stays the same. Obviously Damien will still be played by the same person, so I'm not worried about that. I really love his character as well. But I don't know, man. I'm just more nervous about that bigger time jump. That's what concerns me. Not saying that it's not going to hit, that it's
Mhm.
not going to be good. I just don't know as far as Rhaenyra if I'm going to still continue to love that character, because I think Millie Alcock is killing it.
I don't know enough about I believe it's Emma Darcy that takes over the role. I don't know enough about her as a performer. Um, so I can't judge, nor have I seen anything. So I really can't judge. I didn't feel that way after week 1, even though I loved Rhaenyra in week 1. And now 2 episodes in, I loved her even more in this episode. I don't know how Zach feels, or even I'm starting to go, uh-oh. I didn't have that concern before. I have that concern now.
I don't know if I am concerned. I'm definitely enjoying her portrayal for sure. But I also feel like there's got to be some semblance of continuity when creating a show that is going to have a time jump like this. Like, I feel like Sapochnik and Condal are going, if they're going to be overcompensating on something like a 6-month time jump, that they're going to be, beating you over the head with it to that degree. I feel like they're also going to be thorough in how Rhaenyra gets portrayed from one character to the other. Sure, Emma Darcy's going to put her own particular spin on it, but I don't think that's going to make her not Rhaenyra. I think it's just going to make her not Millie Alcock. And so, if that is the part that you guys are concerned about, I personally am not as concerned over that, but I get where the concern's coming from, because I too have really enjoyed her portrayal. And once again, she shows that her uncle's got a soft spot, and her soft spot is her, and or his soft spot is
Big
her.
time. Yeah.
And like, she straight up says, we've been talking about how this is a spoiler review, so I'm going to go ahead and say it. She straight up says, I'm standing right here.
Yeah.
If you really want to be the heir again, just do it already.
Yes.
Like, I'm right here. And instead of following through on it, he walks away and returns the egg, which is not something that Otto would have been able to get him to do, going through like traditional means,
Not even
traditional
close.
conversations. Otto would never have been able to do that. And then she just swoops in and kind of saves the day.
Such a badass entrance too. I loved it.
Because for like, in the moment there, Otto's like, all right, we need to sheathe this or we're going to get fucking burned.
Mm-hmm.
And like, at that exact moment, she flies in and basically levels the playing field. You got Caraxes on one side and you got Cyrax on the other side. All of a sudden, it's an evenly matched debate again. You can't just like whip out your dragon like you've got a sword that's 10 inches longer than everybody else anymore. Because guess what? In comes another fucking dragon. It's 1-on-1 again, bitch. And so that whole moment of tension may not have actually had swords clashing, but the rising tension, the way things are bubbling, makes you realize how big the payoff is going to be in a couple of episodes. We didn't see, correct me if I'm wrong, but did this episode have swords clashing at all? No tourneys, no jousting, no individual combats.
I don't think so. No.
There was no actual clashing of swords in this episode.
Yeah.
And yet it was still a really solid episode because of scenes like that.
No, I totally agree. And, obviously we talked about the time jump. It's been 6 months and Rhaenyra has been named heir and she's still, bringing around the cups, to everybody. So what has changed really? She has a title. So obviously she knows that. She spoke up. That wasn't taken very, very, very well, received very well. Kind of got put back in her place. So what does she do? She leaves. She leaves and makes that badass entrance and gets the egg back. And yeah, I mean, we'll jump into that. But I thought that was, I don't blame her because if you're gonna name me heir and I'm still gonna be doing the same old stuff, what has really changed?
And to me, this is why I've been like waving my hands and getting on the edge of my seat. I noticed immediate parallels to that, to when America gave women the right to vote. Sure,
Yep.
we've got the 19th Amendment in place. Sure, you've got the right to vote. But what's really changed? Are there women in office? No, not yet. Like, it's such a parallel, and I'm not going to get any further into politics than that because there is still change that needs to happen today, like decades later, and we're only 6 months later in this show, and so like the parallels, the commentary that's being made is so on point. Because yeah, you had all of these lords and ladies come and bend the knee, but it doesn't mean shit because you're still pouring wine and don't get to have your voice heard. Yeah, you're the heir, but it doesn't mean a damn thing. And so I love that she took matters into her own hands. I love that even after the conversation with Rhaenys, she was like, fuck this, I'm going to do something about it. That, to me, is what makes her one of the more interesting characters in the show. There are definitely other players that are kind of doing what Varys did, where they're spinning their own little webs like the spider does, and they're having their own little thread that's slowly coming untangled. But then there are others that you need to have that are basically breaking the trend and making a name for themselves. And I would assert that the two that are still continuing to do that are Daemon and Rhaenyra, and that's why I love that scene at Dragonstone, because it's the two most dynamic players playing off of each other.
No, I totally agree, and I think that's really why those two have stuck out to me and are my two favorite characters so far. Just 2 episodes in is because of that reason. They've both have done a very great job of embodying those characters.
Mm-hmm. Shawn, one other character that is also kind of starting to make a name for himself is Corliss. He comes in with a very brazen attitude at the small council meeting. He makes a very brazen request of the king in a private meeting, and then he has another very important meeting at the end of the episode, which we'll get to. Can you touch on your thoughts on his character development? Because I feel like he's another player that is intriguing me, but hasn't stood out the way the other two have. But I feel like he definitely has the potential to.
Well, I mean, this is a spoiler show, so I'm going to say this right off the bat. House Valerian doesn't exist in Game of Thrones, so really neither of these houses exist anymore in Game of Thrones. And it's I dig the character. Is it Steve Toussaint, I believe, who plays him, is absolutely killing it.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how I would feel about him because I didn't see any of his footage. I only seen him in interviews, and he has an incredibly different demeanor. He seems like the most gentlest, softest, nicest guy who wouldn't harm a fly in interviews at all. Doesn't even look like the character either. Mm-hmm. And like at all. And so I was like, how am I going to relate to this? And I've loved the character so far. And I'll go one further. I agree with the character on basically every point that he's making. And I think the show wants you to side with King Viserys because nice guy, etc. I'm not. I'm sorry. Corliss has every bloody point, and he's right on it, in my opinion.
He's being a little too nice, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So
Walked over.
Well,
yes.
and that goes back to episode 1 with the scene in the throne room with Daemon, where he just straight up tells him, "You're weak." Like we have a simp for a king, basically, if we're going to use modern language, and it's disturbing to see because pretty much every other king or queen that we have seen in Game of Thrones is there by right of conquest or by right of deception because they desire to be on the throne. There are times where he almost looks like it's a chore. Like he doesn't enjoy it and he would rather be doing something else or he would rather, hold a different rank and title so that he doesn't have to deal with the politicking of it all. And maybe that's a sign of the times. In a time where there's peace, a peaceful king doesn't know how to handle matters of conflict. And he's definitely not coping with this stuff very well. And it shows, again, spoilers, it shows when he decides that rather than have a marriage by alliance, he's going to marry Alicent Hightower.
Yeah.
Like making that decision is going to rattle a lot of cages that he really should not have rattled at this point in time.
His own
But
daughter.
but Shawn, to your point though, do you even agree with him up to the point that a 40-something, 50-something-year-old king should be marrying a 12-year-old? Like, that did kind of disturb me just a little bit.
I'm glad the character is being portrayed in a way where even he knows that that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, he only goes, I think, 4 or 5 years up on the age scale. But like just the visual too, because let's be honest, I did not think that actress was 12. I thought she was more like 8.
Yeah. Disturbing scene though
and-
when you see it on screen. It's at first I didn't know exactly who that was at first, and I was like, no way. No way.
And it speaks of how things are supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
back then. And for him to have like the wherewithal to know, no, this isn't right. You're almost going, yeah, like that's a good king. At least in that regard, that's the right decision to make. Don't do it. And then we see what he does at the end, and it makes you question. So did he not do it because it was the right thing to do, or did he not do it because of Alicent? And I honestly don't know the answer to that.
So, I'm sorry, Mike.
No,
I don't mean.
No, go ahead.
It's a 1-minute thought. I promise. I think it actually stems partially from the comfort that Alicent has provided him, because she's basically been with him for the last 6 months. If she's sitting in on meals with him in this episode, that means she's been there regularly for him for the past 6 months. But I also think that it has to do with the comment that she made at lunch right before the emergency small council meeting, where she said something to the effect of, she will be a good and kind queen, or something like that. And in that moment, I think Viserys realized she's good and kind. She would make a good queen. And so I think part of it is the disturbing 12-year-old factor, because Alicent's probably, 16? Like, there's not a huge difference there. She's supposed to be a comparable age to Rhaenyra, because in this show, they're supposed to be, like, close friends, quizzing each other and stuff. Rhaenyra's 15 or 16, thereabouts. So, I mean, it's not a huge difference if we're talking about the age discrepancy. I think part of it has to do with how he actually feels about Alicent compared to how he feels about Lena. And Alicent is good and kind in his eyes and is also of a noble house. Obviously, Otto is the hand of the king. So, like, he's trying to strike middle ground between duty and feelings. Problem is, he just, rubbed the wrong way with the richest house in the kingdom, which is not a good move.
And I kind of had a feeling, earlier on once I kind of found out that the 6 months had passed and Allison was still there, having meals with him and being that they were still close. And I kind of saw how it was going to play out. I kind of figured that he was going to choose Allison.
Mhm.
Um, but I think you pointed out some really good information when you said you're going to rattle a lot of cages with this,
Mhm.
especially his own daughter, because his own daughter finally got over the fact that he is going to have to remarry, right? She's trying to
Yep.
play into,
Yeah.
doing the right thing, although she's still hurting. But come to find out, he's going to marry her best friend that she has been confiding in these past 6 months. You know what I mean? And you could tell
Yep.
on Rhaenyra's face that she is hurt.
Leave it to Game of Thrones to take some intimate family dynamic, such as even a father and daughter finally kind of connecting. And even though we weren't there for that 6 months, finally kind of connecting for the first time after 6 months, just for him to be so incredibly naive to not realize um, what that would do to his daughter. And can I just say that Millie Alcock's performance as that's happening is like, I know she's not in all the episodes, but I hope this actress gets some Emmy nods. She was incredible. I felt like I was on the verge of tearing up because every time it flashed to her, her heart was breaking. And then you think about it, her heart's not breaking just one way, her heart's breaking two ways. And if not even three ways, there's the, well, I want to be, I was named queen. I can finally, the Daenerys break the wheel, make things the way they should be. Her and Rhaenys are talking about it earlier. I'm not saying this is in order, but that's one of them. And then number two, she finally connects with her father after the loss of her mother. It's been 6 bloody months. She talks about the grieving process, which is such a human thing that we all go through when we lose someone.
Yep.
And then to have what we assume at most, maybe it's a week later, maybe it's the next day, maybe it's a few days later. Um, he goes and does that. And so she gets shattered as a daughter, but then she also gets shattered because her best friend, possibly potential love interest, I know they're teasing it, um, like all three, strike one, strike two, strike three in one foul swoop. And let me tell you, I already thought in the episode that her character sees eye to eye with Damon and understands where he comes from to an extent. And now I just think like that drives it even further now.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad you actually pointed out that point with Viserys, because I don't want to let him off the hook either, because he is naive in that sense. I kind of, when I first kind of pointed that out, I kind of just blamed Allison for that, but he definitely needs to hold some responsibility in that as well for being as naive. And that kind of has, he talks about struggling to connect with his daughter, but does he ever really make an attempt to either? So
Can I ask you guys about a character? I know this isn't sort of on target with what we've been doing, but given his reaction or lack thereof, um, Otto Hightower in 2 episodes is making Littlefinger seem like he's in the minor leagues and the way he handles stuff, in my opinion. His very, shall we say, um, delicate handling of his daughter and King Viserys and his scheming. In my opinion, this is how I'm reading it. Maybe it ends up different, but his scheming to get the high towers in a higher seat of power is very, very, very prominent. And then he does the non-little finger thing and legitimately puts himself in the line of danger, knowing that Damon has a dragon. Like, what did you think was going to happen when you went there? So like the scheming is right there with Littlefinger, but he also seems like he's willing to physically engage if he has to. And that adds a dynamic that we didn't see with Littlefinger because he wouldn't be caught dead getting into a fight, in my opinion. And the one he put in, he was left with the scar from,
I think Otto plays the game well. He does what's expected of him on the surface, while also trying to do some things that are flying under the radar in order to continue to gain positions of power. The problem is sometimes he does a little too much of what's expected of him, and that's where he gets in trouble at Dragonstone. Like, he knows that the king shouldn't go there, and he knows that it's his duty to go in his stead, but he also knows very well that there's a dragon on fucking Dragonstone. And so, like, he's kind of boxed in there as the hand of the king just a little bit. He doesn't really have a good alternative, so he just does what's expected of him. When they were appointing members of the Kingsguard, he was talking about how it's expected to bring somebody from a noble house that is a good ally of the crown. That's what's expected of them. This is what's expected of us in order to continue that alliance. It's an honor to their house to have this person on the Kingsguard. And Rhaenyra was the only one with logic that was like, no, we need somebody who actually knows how to fight. So I think Otto plays the politics side of it very well. He knows the politics. He knows what's expected. But I don't think I've ever heard of anything from his experience, and I haven't really researched his character too much, but I don't think he has a whole lot of combat experience. And I don't think he really knew what to do in the situation with Daemon, which is why it was so great that Rhaenyra bailed him out, because if she hadn't, he probably would have died.
See, this is why Game of Thrones is one of the most immersive shows that you can do. I know this is House of the Dragon, but you and I are viewing this very differently. I didn't view it as Rhaenyra was going to bail out Otto. I viewed it as Rhaenyra was going to,
show her worth,
get the egg back, show her. But if anything, bail her up.
That's absolutely what she did. I wasn't trying to use it like as a way of she was going to save Otto. He was just a fortunate byproduct of that. She was absolutely going to show her worth, but if she hadn't, then Otto would have died. That's what I'm getting at. Is she bailed him out by showing her presence, and if she hadn't, he would have died. That's all I meant.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that.
And yeah. I hope that we get that Damian and Otto showdown. I really do.
Yeah, because wasn't the shot on the bridge something from the trailer?
It was.
Like I think like the other 15-20% of what we saw in the trailer was pretty much in this second episode. There's a couple of small sequences after the time jump where we see Emma Darcy, but for the most part, I'd say like the next 3 episodes are going to be stuff that is footage we have not seen at all.
Next episode looks really intense. I don't know if y'all stuck around.
Oh, I saw the preview for that. I am so stoked for that for a lot of reasons, and I'm not going to get too far.
Me neither. Yeah, we're not. Let's not jump.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to do a reaction to it.
Oh man, it is so good. It is so good. But yeah, I guess I can't do spoilers then, Shawn. Damn it, because you didn't watch all of it. But that one, I cannot wait to be a part of. And honestly, please don't tell my fiance this, but I'm a little sad that I'm going to be gone for a couple of episodes. I'm going to be on my fucking honeymoon, okay?
Hey.
But the stuff that is coming up and the time that I'm going to be gone is going to be like right around episodes 5 and 6. And now that I know the information that I know, I'm sitting here going, fuck!
So next week I'll be in Atlanta next Sunday, but I'm taking my laptop. I'm gonna have HBO Max and I'll be glued to it. So I know that's a lot different than being on your honeymoon. You can't be like, honey, I gotta go take a shit. I gotta be gone for an hour in the bathroom.
I mean, I've had some half-hour shits, but not 55-minute shits. But I think she'd be on board with watching it. I don't think she'd be on board with any kind of review episodes. That's what I'm getting at. Yeah. gonna have plenty of time to watch it. We'll be home, at our condo on Sunday evenings, but I'm definitely not gonna be getting on any of these review episodes until well afterwards. So,
Unless you want.
you guys are really gonna have to hold down the fort in my absence because the stuff that this is building up to looks fucking awesome.
It's gonna be incredible, and yet don't do that. You'll end up like Ned Stark. You like the hat, but you don't want to end up like Ned. So that's terrible. I'm just so incredibly thrilled with how well this show has started so far, and I'm always curious to see what the audience reception is to it. And I will be tomorrow too, and I'll be curious as we get deeper into the week to see what the ratings were. I don't expect it to pop the rating that the pilot did, but there's always the possibility that so many people love the pilot and that word of mouth spread that it could pop an even higher rating. The thing they need to avoid is losing 50% of their audience after week one, which I don't think is going to happen. The visual components of this episode, I liked that only parts of this episode could you feel the Miguel Sapochnik, wide IMAX feel shots, which there were definitely some in and around Dragonstone. That was definitely prominent.
Yep.
There was a few other shots when Viserys and Rhaenys are walking, and when Viserys and is it Elena or Elena? Lena, are walking that are just absolutely gorgeous. But I liked that they were able to pull the camera in closer in this episode to the characters because it's more of a character episode, and yet you still get some of that big time feel when it's needed, like during the dragon part, like during Viserys saying that it's going to be Alicent that he marries. It was just a very well put together episode. The score wasn't very noticeable at times, but when it was during the important parts.
Yeah.
The visuals and the score, fellas, I really, really dug it. I thought they made the right choices.
Couldn't agree more. I really thought this episode was really good, and something that sticks out to me is, something that Zach pointed out earlier. There wasn't any combat in this episode, and for me to be as intrigued as I was, which I didn't doubt that I wouldn't be if there wasn't any, but just goes to show how great this season is and how great episode two was. I was fully intrigued. I love the storylines. Again, went by super fast to the point where I am already ready for next Sunday. So I thought that was a great point out by Zach.
Let me try to wrap things up by talking about that final scene because it's pretty poignant to what's going to be happening moving forward. Obviously, Shawn hasn't seen the next episode preview yet, so I'm not going to dive too much into that part of it, Mike. But seeing Driftmark, for starters, was pretty cool. And then seeing the camera shot selection intentionally hiding Daemon until the very last possible second and recognizing that there are definitely some commonalities between the characters that could lead to some very interesting movings and shakings moving forward. Because here's the deal. Corliss has a navy, and they stated probably 3 or 4 times that Daemon has an army. He's got the gold cloaks at Dragonstone, some 2,000 strong or something like that. So these are 2 pretty prominent forces that have an opportunity to make a statement, and Corliss is very invested in what's going on with the Triarchy, with the Crab Feeder. Daemon doesn't seem quite as interested until Corliss makes the point that there's opportunities to make your name worthwhile. Thoughts, guys, on that conversation and how it could end up playing into these next 3 episodes, Mike?
Oh, well, I mean, huge. I don't know. I really think Daemon, like, I feel like he obviously loves his father, but like, or I'm sorry, is it his uncle, right? His uncle. Sorry, I'm all over the place.
The king?
Yeah, the king.
His
What is it?
brother.
His brother. Sorry.
Brother.
See, all over the
They're
place.
Targaryens. It's all of them.
That's
All
what
of
I'm
the
saying.
The brother could be the yeah, it could, yeah.
Okay, you're right.
brother
I mean,
could also
you're
be
right.
your uncle. I mean, look at what happened in Game of Thrones.
But true. But we saw him get kind of like defensive, like, hey, don't talk about my guy like that. So
About my brother.
my
Like
brother like that.
he didn't say the king.
He
He
said
said
my brother.
you don't talk about my brother that
Well,
way. I found that interesting.
it's interesting because I think Shawn pointed this out last episode, which I wasn't on, but I think I watched, and I believe Shawn, you pointed out saying when obviously the celebration was happening, Damon didn't look too enthused about it, right? He obviously loves his family, but he wants to be recognized as well and wants to feel important. So I agree that's why it kind of caught his attention. But yeah, man, I don't know. I think I think it's going to be very intriguing. I kind of knew it was Damon sitting. I kind of figured that's who he was talking to. It's going to be interesting though. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, so the Damon Corliss thing does not surprise me just because I knew we were going there. That's something that was pretty prominent and out there in a lot of circles. So I knew that was going to be something that happened. I like the way it happened, and I still stand by. Is Damon an asshole and probably not, a role model for your children? Absolutely, he's both of those things. He's violent, and he can be unhinged. But you know what else he is? Fiercely loyal to his family. I loved when the Kingsguard stepped in there in episode 1 to like stop him. And I think the audience is supposed to be like, oh, he was going to strike down the king. And I don't think he's ever once thought that. He thinks his brother's a terrible king because in a way he's kind of right. He's a pushover, even though he's a nice man. Or is he? We'll find out. But I just think that Damon's dynamic is not as black and white as a lot of people want it to be. And in my opinion, shades of gray characters are far more entertaining to watch and see where they go.
Well, the fun thing about these two characters is I think they're both shades of gray. I think both Corliss and Damon are fitting into that gray area, and it'll be interesting to see how they play off of each other. Because to a certain extent, this is a necessary evil for both of them. Corliss doesn't think he can act on his own, and Damon needs allies. And so I don't think either of them really want to ally with the other one, but they also recognize that they're kind of the only options at the moment. And so I think it'll be a very tense alliance. It'll be very fragile at times. And I'm curious to see those future conversations. It reminds me very much of the conversations between Pre Vizsla and Darth Maul in the Clone Wars. Like, you need each other, but at the same time, you're also plotting to backstab the other one. And so I'm really intrigued to see how that plays out and if there will end up being some betrayal that moves forward, because that's kind of what Game of Thrones is all about. Fragile alliances that fall apart when you no longer feel like you need the other party. And this is definitely setting itself up for some sort of big payoff one way or another. Because if Corliss does stay loyal to Daemon, then it leads to what we know becomes the Targaryen Civil War. Houses allying with other houses. If it doesn't stay together, then seeing the two of them go at each other's throats will also be interesting. So no matter how this plays out, I'm really curious to see these two gray characters go at it.
Absolutely. I think that these characters are going to be something that drives the show's narrative. Obviously, there is the Rhaenyra Alicent component to this show that is if I'm being honest, it's what the lore is based off. It is. It's based off of their story with the third head, poking up being Daemon. They are your 3 long-term characters in this story. And so if I'm not saying get too attached, but like those are the characters that you can really get attached to. I don't know a bunch of the characters that die. Obviously, it's Game of Thrones. A bunch of characters are going to die. I'm positive even though I don't know the spoilers, I'm positive we've already met characters that have had talking scenes that are going to be dead before season 1 is over. That's just the way this works. And I'm not just referring to Emma, but I dig it, man. It's a great start. I have to ask you guys though. Last week we did a champion of the week, and mine was Damon.
I think everybody's was Damon.
Yeah.
My champion of the week this week is Rhaenyra. It has to be Rhaenyra. Where are you guys with your champion of the week?
Goes to her. And I think for several reasons, I just think she really sticks out in this episode. In particularly at the end, when her father chooses to be with Alicent. I thought the acting there was phenomenal. And then I had mentioned before when she decided to leave and kind of confront Damien, and I thought it was so powerful for her to be on that bridge and saying, "Oh, look, I'm right here. If you want to kill me, kill me."
Yeah, it's hard to top scenes like that. It really is. I will say though, I didn't really care for hers and Alicent's scene in the Sept.
That's where I was. Like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, that's the Sept, right? Obviously, it's supposed to look different.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I couldn't pinpoint it at first.
Yeah, they're in the Sept. And again, this goes off of a conversation that we've had previously. I know where their dynamic is headed. And I know that it's going to be a tense one. I know from the preview that we're going to see Emma Darcy's Rhaenyra looking at Alicent and saying a very poignant line. And it's tough for me to watch these types of bonding scenes when I know already where things are headed. So the scene last week with the two of them in the God's Wood, and then this scene with them in the Sept, it's meant to build this friendship dynamic so that I can feel sympathy for them when it falls apart, and it's just not happening. I'm not having it. And so I will put a knock on that part of it, but overall the Rhaenyra character was just so strong in everything after that. Her conversation with Viserys in his room, the scene at Dragonstone, the scene at the small council at the end of the episode, you can just feel the portrayal and feel the sympathy for her character. And as much as I want to say Corliss, I'm going to save it for a future week because I feel like in these next 2 episodes, he's going to be my champion of the week. I feel like the stuff that he did and the things that he played, like the cards that he dealt, are setting him up to be a champion of the week, probably in week 3 or week 4. But this week, I think it goes to Rhaenyra, yeah.
So let me play devil's advocate here with you for a second. And I'm not saying I know the answer to this. I'm theorizing. What if they're doing that intentionally that way? Like the marketing for this show was extremely intentional. They wanted to get a lot out there because they had a lot to sell. They were desperate to sell a lot. Maybe we're not supposed to feel that connection as strongly as we would if we didn't see the marketing or didn't know any of the source material between Rhaenyra and Alicent, because the audience, in my opinion, already knows that Alicent might not fall far from the fatherly apple tree. At least I get that vibe from her at times. She, even in episode 1, she basically had to be told to go to was it in this episode? Didn't Otto basically tell her, get back to the king sort of thing? I believe it was this one because the first one, episode 1, was the big, oh, you're doing that. And then it just, there's more, like, she's not as pure as Rhaenyra, in my opinion. I don't believe it for a second. And in knowing that, I think we're supposed to feel for Rhaenyra more than we're supposed to feel for Alicent, simply because look at everything that this character is already going through and is going to continue to go through that's going to shape the character moving forward. And yet you're still going to have people choosing team Alicent over team Rhaenyra, which is absolutely where the show is heading.
Shit,
I don't know. So
sorry, my bad. Sorry.
Who is Team Allison like right now? I don't know. I haven't seen any message boards. I haven't been part of any chat that are Team Allison over Team Rhaenyra. Like, that's not a knock on Allison. Allison's an interesting character, but Rhaenyra is just like steps above her as far as development and interest goes. Like, she's basically being pimped out by her father, and is doing what she's been told to do. And maybe the one saving grace is that Viserys is actually kind of a nice guy, and he's a bit of a simp, and maybe she won't have a horrible, disastrous marriage to the king. But like, for the most part, her character is just nowhere near as dynamic as Rhaenyra's has been. That may change as she grows up and gets married and evolves. I can already see it coming. She's gonna have a son. Like, there's going to be that dynamic that gets played in there, and not only are the friends going to be driven apart, but now her friend is going to be the one that births the competition for the throne. Like, that's like just sitting there waiting to get dropped on us. But I just don't know anybody that's currently on Team Allison. If you are, hit us up in the comments section. Find us on social media. Let us know if you are Team Allison or Team Rhaenyra. But for the most part, what I've seen has been Team Rhaenyra.
Tread lightly.
This is true. All right, guys. We did Champion of the Week. Let's do final thoughts and scores, and we'll get out of here. Shawn?
I think it's a great follow-up episode. I know there's going to be people that complain about the lack of action, and the hilarious part is it's going to be the same people that complained about 7 and 8 moving too fast in the original Game of Thrones. And like, this was your quintessential Game of Thrones episode where we slow down and we get a character study of multiple characters in this episode.
Yeah.
And it was everything it needed to be. You need table setting episodes for Game of Thrones to work like it did basically seasons 1 through 6. And they're doing that. There's a little more time in between the episodes, but it's fantastic. And scoring this episode is hard. I don't remember what I gave the first one. I feel like it might have been like a 9 or something. I'm gonna have to look back. But I'm going to give this one an 8.5 because it feels criminal to give it any less.
Yeah, I'm going 8.5 as well. And the big reason for that is I was really intrigued throughout this episode with no combat fighting, with really nothing. As far as action packed wise, I didn't think that they needed it, and they didn't. I thought the writing was done very well. We learned a lot about these characters, like Shawn said. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great follow up, and I cannot wait for next week because next week looks absolutely phenomenal.
Okay, well, here are my reasons for my score before I give it. The episode is titled The Rogue Prince, and the Rogue Prince is in just 2 scenes. A lot of stuff happens around him, and we get notes from him, but aside from the bridge at Dragonstone and then the strategy table with his mistress, we don't get very much of the Rogue Prince. So, already not off to a strong start, because the whole title of the episode only has 2 scenes with him in it. Secondly, didn't care for the scene in the Sept, and I mentioned that really, really quickly. I didn't particularly care for the scene with the king and Laena in the garden. I liked the conversation that happened after it between Rhaenyra and Rhaenys, but that conversation down in the garden did not really care for all that much either. And then the scene at the table with the other member of the small council, where Viserys was like trying to get other opinions from his other counselors. The guy was basically a yes man and didn't really give the king as much insight as he was hoping for. And I feel like the show is like the Game of Thrones I'm used to is better written than that. There are better small council members than that, than just a glorified yes man. And then also saying 6 months 4 times in the episode. Didn't care for that either. We've touched on that. So I have some knocks, in spite of how much I enjoyed it and how much it is setting the table, as you guys said. those knocks do take it a couple of points off for me. So I'm kind of hovering between the 7.5 and an 8 region because there are some legitimate gripes that I've got for it. But in spite of all that, it's still a pretty high score. I just am really, really curious to see what the other episodes are going to be like. And I don't want to give this one that high of a score when I feel like the rest of the season is going to be better than this table setting episode. So I'm probably closer to a 7.5. Damn it, we made it through the whole episode, Shawn.
Almost.
Every time.
That's fair, man. Hey, we're definitely not here to give everything gold stars. There's other people that can do that. And I thought a lot of those points are fair too. And yet it still scored a 7.5. Probably speaks volumes about the quality of the show that we're watching.
Yep.
Quick production note. So Dragonstone, if you watch Game of Thrones, the original series, season 7 begins the end of the first episode. Daenerys and everybody arrive at Dragonstone, and we see them walk through the gates with the dragon heads. You'll notice that we see that area in this, but it's more pulled back, and we sort of go up and over it and onto the walkway where we seen Jon and Davos dive down from Drogon flying up. The reason for that is they have no access to the front of that anymore. So they had to. I remember that being a big issue because Dragonstone's going to be seen a lot in this show, and I don't know why it happened or how it happened, but where they shot Grey Worm opening the gate and Daenerys and them going through it, they have no access. They can't go there anymore for some reason. I don't know why. There's a technical reason behind it. So all that there and why it's pulled back was CG. So they had to go from a CG environment into a real environment that was built on a green. All of that was actually done on green screen. And that's some pretty high quality green screen because I thought the visual component of the dragons coming through the clouds and everything looked absolutely phenomenal. I thought it was fantastic, and I hope other properties learn how to use the volume like that.
Other properties, he says. Oh, man. Well, let us know in the comments what your score out of 10 was. Go find us on social media if you haven't followed us already. There's a lot of different links that you can follow. It's all going to be in the description. And let us know what you thought of episode 2, The Rogue Prince. But we will definitely be back for more conversations in future weeks, and there will be other videos surrounding House of the Dragon and just Game of Thrones in general. You mentioned, Shawn, that you've got another reaction video coming up. We've got a discussion on the intro that we touched on at the top of the episode. So there's a lot of really great conversations and a lot of great content still to be made. But this was a fun one. Mike, thanks for being a part of the action tonight, man. I know I kept you up a little bit later than
Good,
we
man.
probably should have, but
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It was awesome.
What other stuff are you doing on the channel that's not Game of Thrones?
The Overlook Drive-In that I absolutely love. Me and Shawn have what do we have episode 1 is out with The Shining, and we have Hush coming out tomorrow.
No, I know what you did last summer. It's tomorrow. Hush is next week.
Okay, I know what you did last
Dare
summer.
you lie to the people?
Yeah, I know. When are you dropping this video, Shawn?
It'll be probably right before we go to have the baby. So you're looking at sometime in the afternoon. So it's about halfway edited, and I gotta edit the other half tomorrow. So
yeah.
So
yeah, we have a great lineup coming up. Shawn did an amazing job when it comes to the Overlook Drive-In as far as the editing and then the intro. Perfect intro. Gotta say that. Perfect intro. Perfect. I loved it. Go ahead.
You flatter me, sir.
I mean, it's pretty damn good. So, appreciate you doing that, Zach, for us.
Of course.
But yeah, the Overlook Drive-In, man. We have, I think, what are we up to? January as far as movies, Shawn, that we have kind of laid out pretty much. So, a lot of great movies, not just horror movies as well. Some really good action and Christmas movies coming too. So, really look forward to getting those out on the channel. And yeah, I'm on the show pretty much most Tuesdays. And thank you, Shawn, for bringing that up. Take One Podcast on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple. We're doing the Road to Halloween Ends right now. Shawn's episode was the latest to release. We actually touched on the first episode of House of the Dragon, and then we dive into Halloween for the return of Michael Myers. So a lot going on.
There's definitely a lot going on amongst all three of us. Shawn, you mentioned the baby coming, so you're probably not going to have a whole lot of content for the next little while, but what would you like to tell the folks at home about?
Honestly, just enjoy yourselves. Summer's almost over. The colder months, for some of us anyway, are about to get here. And
winter coming.
Winter is in fact coming, and there's a show about that coming too. But just tune in to the channel. The guys are going to, I believe Kieran is going to lead Tommy and Jer on a discussion of this episode again on Tuesday night, along with other content. So you can check that out on the Fandom Empire show. I'm off this week. I don't know if Mike's taking it off this week, but he should. He deserves a week off, unless there's other news to talk about. And just, like the videos, comment, and if you have anything you want to see us cover, let us know. You can always check us out on Patreon too, patreon.com/Fandom Empire. How about you, Zach? Where can everybody find you at, sir?
You'll find me at most of the time on football fields. The IPC podcast is still running. We're doing kind of self-produced stuff right now. Probably like maybe once a month, just because of Ben's and my schedule going the way that it is. We did find a way to get everybody together for a big roundtable discussing the final season of Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, which is a show we've been avidly watching for the last couple of years now, and we were pretty satisfied with the way that it finished up and the connections it made to the franchise. So go find at IPC Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff, and you'll find the links to those reviews. But for the most part, every Friday night, a couple of Thursday nights this year, I'll be doing play-by-play for the local high school football team in my area. We had a total of 800 people, 800 listens on last Friday's broadcast, which is a record for the first week of the season, and just really good numbers overall. So really proud of that kind of reach that we've been getting, and pretty excited for what the future weeks are going to hold. Hopefully it leads to a full-time job one of these days, but in the meantime, I get to do play-by-play, and then my dad does color commentary and helps me produce it. So it's some really cool father-son time as well. He's a graduate of the high school that we do the coverage of, so there's like some school spirit involved in there too, which is really cool. So mostly this and football, and then the occasional IPC episode. So that is going to do it for this episode of House of the Empire. Thanks to everybody who was a part of this episode, either in front of the camera or behind the scenes. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that you know when future episodes are dropping. But for Mike and Shawn, my name is Zach. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time when the Empire returns.
Legacy is what you pass down to your children and to your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone. Many hope to create it. Many more hope to live up to it. Very few ever succeed. The legacy of this show hopes to be about what Westeros means to us, and what we hope it may mean to a new generation of fans, and the generation after that. Boasting discussions that will endure, passions that will rise, debates that will make the small council jealous. With a combined 44 years of experience behind a microphone, the hosts and guest hosts of this show are dedicated to the fans' experience in reviewing anything from Westeros, Essos, and beyond. This group is not the House of a Lion, a direwolf, or even a dragon. This is a fraternity, a lineage, a house that endures beyond sigils, and aims to leave a legacy no other podcast has. So it's time to call the Banos, for this is the House of the Empire.